Before printing and video, humans got their news, opinions, and gossip via the intimacy of the spoken word. In recent times, audio has made a comeback, and if podcasts, voice assistants, and apps like Calm and Clubhouse are any indication, there's more to come. Being the co-founder of Curio, Srikant Chakravarti knows all about this. Curio is an audio platform aiming to use the best journalism as opportunities for learning and self-improvement. In this episode, he talks about the story behind Curio, what made him switch from law to entrepreneurship, building a product around curation and audio content, and how curiosity enables a sense of wonder and an open mindset. He is in conversation with me, Ramanand from CTQ.
This is the CTQ Smartcast, where we have conversations about upleveling, deliberate practice, and getting future relevant.
Hi Srikant, welcome to the CTQ Smartcast.
Hi Ramanand, thank you very much for having me.
Great, there's lots to talk about, so let's get right into it. But I want to know, what is a lawyer doing in entrepreneurship? I was going through your profile and I realized you're a lawyer. So tell me how that came about.
I think, I became a lawyer, from school, and then, and got into my career as a lawyer, right? And I enjoyed it, right? I enjoyed it. I was a lawyer in India, then I was a lawyer in the UK, and very challenging for me, personally, right? In terms of mental challenge, constantly sort of getting to try out new things. But after a period of time, for me, it was just more like, okay, what else can I try? Right? That's all. I mean, I've been a lawyer for more than 10 years. And I said, okay, if either I can continue on the path for the next 20, 25 years, right, which is what it will be, or can I try something else? You could say an early midlife crisis, right? and my wife was very supportive, and I said, you know what, you keep working, and I will just quit, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So then she said, okay. And I did that. So then I just quit one day without knowing what else I'm going to do. And then I said, let's figure out what else, right? And then the whole purpose was really to then make sure, see what, not just challenge myself, but also see that, okay, if in a new way, what is going to completely get me out of my comfort zone, right? And so for that, I had to move away from the law as much as I liked it, and then, genuinely the challenge of building a company, a product company, across, which will then has to appeal to many people, is a huge challenge, right? And so that's why I sort of went into I had a previous startup called Unravel a few years back, which was, where we were using, it was offering searching using images. Right. Okay. So like what Google Lens is doing now, but that was on the mobile about 7-8 years ago, right? Okay. And but it was ambitious, unrealistically ambitious at that point of time for me as well, because I think it was very much of a research project as well, because it's not like we could just take something and execute it, right? There's a lot of hardcore technical research and R&D that would have been required. And Google was spending something like $3 million a year on it. So then at that time itself, right? And then, so we were nowhere equipped to do that. So then that I exited from that, and then and then Govind, who I know for many years, is an old friend of mine for many years, and then he came to me actually with the idea of Curio, and then we started.
Very interesting, because a lot of it resonates because. Me, my co-founder Harish, we've gone through similar journeys, and we also have our wives to thank for it as well. So here's to all of them. So tell me, tell me a little bit about Curio, but also tell me what is the role that learning about the world or keeping abreast of trends, because what you were doing a few years ago with Unravel seems to be something that. You thought this was how the world was going to need something like this, and so talk to me about Curio's journey, but also tell me what role that the kind of information that one gets from something like Curio actually prepares you for the future.
Okay, So yeah, so because there are two parts to the question, and I will go from one to the other, right?
Sure.
And so the journey of Curio, it's a very quickly, right? I mean, obviously, so there, after Unravel, I think for me personally, right? I mean, it was not like, the idea very much was, even back in 2013, 14, it was like, okay, we are becoming a more sort of mobile, on-the-go kind of lifestyle culture, right? I mean, not just across the world, right? And mobile phones were exploding, whatever else it is, and generally people were not sitting at home and reading or sitting at home and this, right? Technology was becoming a part of our, mobile technology was very much a part of our everyday lives, right? And really the aspect was how could we then use that to then augment our everyday experiences, right? And it's not like we were having this whole social media kind of dilemma at that point of time, right? It hadn't yet reached this sort of explosion back then, but it was interesting to see, and that's where, say, Unravel as an idea came about, right? Saying, okay, you know what, if I don't have the time to sit and type out a thing, or if I go and see something, I don't know what to type out, right? I can't go and say, oh, like heart-shaped leaf, can you please identify it for me, right? I mean, you want to take a photo of that and identify it. So that's where it came from, and in that sense, audio was a very natural way to go, because as we started having more and more audio on the go, right? The idea is that you could absorb audio very much, and absorb content, which and the interstitial time during which you could absorb content suddenly opened up for you, right? Because earlier on, if you're driving, you're walking, you're washing dishes, you're doing whatever else it is, you're not absorbing any content, right? You're basically doing only that because you have to either sit and read or watch TV or do something else, right? And so it's the whole thing opened up, and that opened up a whole new avenue of opportunity for us. And really the thing was that also from a technology and really where we were in terms of the scope available for us to innovate. I mean, we felt that while video had sort of developed a lot over the last 100 years, right? I mean, audio really hadn't developed at all, right? And there were many reasons for it, which I'm not going to go into. But so basically, you get somebody from the 1930s to come and listen to a podcast today and ask them what is it, and they'll say, it's a radio program, right? But you get somebody from the 1930s to come and look at YouTube or to come and look at Twitter, and they will say, I don't know what this is. It'll be something completely new for them, right? So the scope of advancement that we have is so much more than audio, right? And even today, it's much more, right? I mean, you're just barely scratching the surface of, we're still only talking about one-way interaction largely, right? And so far, audio interactions are limited to very transactional thing. Amazon, buy my groceries or whatever. But really, the audio interaction with content is still a huge aspect that's left to be explored. So that's the opportunity.
Correct.
Now, in terms of Curio itself, so actually the idea came from Govind, right? Govind used to be he used to lead strategy for BBC News, right? And really, for him, and he is a massive audio junkie, right? For me, I am not. Counter to that, I'm not an audio junkie at all, right? I'll come to that. But basically, he's a massive audio junkie. He listens to all sorts of podcasts, all spoken audio, Radio 4, etc. And really, the idea was, okay, there is so much of high quality content which is lying with all these publishers and all these things. And he would see in BBC News that they would send like a reporter to Afghanistan. They'd work on this thing and they'd spend like £30,000 on it, right? And then it will live on the website for like 2 days, right? And then it's gone. So then isn't there some way of really making sure that content lives longer and sort of gets on there, right? So it's, and really, and for me, the challenge was that, okay, I'm not an audio junkie, but there are certain kinds of audio I like. And I'm a long-time radio listener, but I don't listen to audiobooks, right? There are some podcasts I can listen to, but not all podcasts. So I said, okay, the challenge is, it's not that I don't like audio. It's that I need, people like me need audio to be produced or offered in a certain kind of way before it becomes, accessible, or before it becomes something that they're willing to engage with. So it's a combination of these two that we started Curio with, right? Now, in coming to the second question of yours as to the information and what it needs. Now, to be honest, that's been a journey, right? And that's been an evolution through Curio itself, even from the time that we started. Because I think the one thing we started Curio with was, as I said, because with Govind's insight was that saying, okay, what is content that can genuinely provide a long shelf life or have a long shelf life that can continue to be surfaced and offered in a way where people can listen to it at any point of time, right? So that's where it started off from, right? And secondly, the thing was also, Ramanand, it was just two of us with no money. If you want to set up a good audio platform or any content platform, you need high quality content. So, and high quality content means lots of money, right? And so there's no way, and neither of us are producers or content people or anything, right? As you said, I'm a lawyer, Govind is a strategist, so it's not like, though he's worked in the BBC, he's not like we were content people or tech people for that matter, right? So the question really was, okay, how do we get started on this? And that's where the thing of partnering with some of these publications came in to actually say, okay, this is high value content that's there. And if we could find a way to produce it economically, that could open up a huge bank for us, right? And so the idea came up with actually getting in long shelf life content, right? But over time, what happened was, as I said, then you saw the social dilemma happening. You saw the way, not just social dilemma, but also the way news has, one thing that's always been evident was how news has developed through social media and delivering of news has developed and information has developed, right? And overall, this is where it's become more superficial consumption, more, people are, the scrolling aspect of this. And that's understandable, right? I mean, that's how the mobile internet has been designed. That's how visual internet has been designed, and it's going to happen. So for us, whereas audio, so if you think about it in the visual internet, it takes more effort for you to stop and read something more, read the whole thing rather than just to skim through. But audio as a natural medium is where it takes more effort for you to skim than to let it play through, right? You press play, it just sort of plays through. You may zone in and zone out, but you sort of play through. So that's a natural benefit of audio, which is there. It's a lot more immersive. It's a lot more naturally, this one. And what we were saying is that as we saw this, we said, okay, we are in audio. And then what you want is to then allow people to the opportunity to immerse themselves in high value content more, right? And let it open up. And if it opens up that way, then people can form their own opinions, people can form their own ideas and be more this one over there. But that's basically how we decided to get into that, move more into the really genuinely realize the value of audio and sort of start offering that more consciously.
Great. In fact, we've done our compounds, CTQ compounds, right? The idea was very, I think, a lot of overlap because we also believe that there is a lot of timeless, high quality content out there. Sometimes it's a discovery problem. Sometimes it is a routine or a behavioral kind of a problem. Sometimes it is just the medium in which you want to consume. And I think, that's why we thought that, doing something with Curio kind of made sense because, there are a lot of overlaps there. I want to kind of get into some of the points that you mentioned. So,
and actually, just before that, Ramanand, very quickly, right? I mean, I think that's where I also, I mean, when we spoke first about CTQ, right? I mean, it really struck me because what you are using is a different way of a different kind of medium to achieve the same thing, right? And actually, the social aspect of getting people to discuss it and using that to drive the habit and also using that to drive immersion into content is another way, right? And I think that's a very powerful way as well. So they're complementary ways.
Right. In fact, you mentioned, words like on the go or snackable, but these are snacks that are good for you. These are not your, you will not regret this in the long term, though it may be something that you enjoy doing. It's like the fun of snacking, but with something, interesting. I think 15 minutes can do a lot for you. So tell me a little bit about the, the kind of content that your choices for curation. What do you pick? What do you leave on the, what do you not put on the shelf?
So, I mean, this is, it all, I mean, this is again, like we said, it's an evolution, right? That's happened for us. But ultimately, it goes back to, we had to really ask ourselves today, why would we want to exist as Curio, right? And why does Curio exist, right? And what are we here for, right? And then it's not about, audio or, media or whatever, right? I mean, ultimately we said, okay, overall we are saying, okay, it is to sort of help to, we're saying we have to generate empathy through a sense of wonder, right? Wonder coming through discovery and, maybe this one, but also the idea is really to generate that empathy through wonder, right? And that's really what we are talking about as our own sort of purpose over there, right? And then that starts to drive everything in terms of content choices, etc. And if you break that down, right, then essentially it's almost there are two problems at a two kinds of areas that are there, right? At a societal level, we can see that the world is disconnected, right? So there's a lot of abundance of information, right? But still, there is almost like a complete sense of disconnect, right? With more and more people going into their own circles, right? Opposing opinions, echo chambers, whatever. And secondly, at a personal level, it's almost like people are feeling the need more and more to have a sense of wanting to be thought leaders, to grow, to break patterns, where they want to say that, okay, we know we can't grow if you're sort of standing still, right? And so if you're bring all of these together, and then that's where our content choices come in, right? So for us, it's very clear that there's lots of news, right? So basically, then any content that doesn't advance these basic sort of ideas of or fundamental needs are not things that are chosen over there, right? Into Curio. So basically, there is basic information saying, oh, this is what happened today, this is what happened there. We are not here as the information provider for you, right? So that's not there. You can, and that is, as we said, there's an abundance of that information anyway, so that you can go and get that. Equally, because of our thing, because one thing that we found very much was that there's a lot of, everybody wants to say that, my view is the right view today, right? Whichever way it is, right? I mean, if I look at the US, you can say Trump is an idiot or Trump is a savior. Here, in India, you will say, Modi is a savior or Modi is an idiot, whatever, right? I mean, but everybody wants to say we are right. But the more you say we are right and you are wrong, you're not bringing people together again, right? I mean, it's not the thing. So we don't shy away from opinion, but I think really it was about, okay, what is it that is giving people an insight into that opinion, right? So if I'm saying that, for whatever reason, if I'm saying, okay, it's almost saying, okay, if I believe that I'm an anti-vaxxer, right? And I say, well, you know what, I am an anti-vaxxer. And if I'm an anti-vaxxer, okay, then there's a strong belief that there's a reason. So if there is something going into why am I an anti-vaxxer? What is it that makes me say that, oh, you know what, I believe I'm being taken for a ride. That's all I need. So, and then it's for you to then decide whether that is a valid enough reason, whatever is, etc. Right? I mean, has Big Pharma been manipulating people and research or not, or whatever? Right? I mean, there could be this one, right? And equally on the other side, why should we sort of, say that, oh, vaccination is great for you, right, or whatever, right? Why do we believe? So long as I'm giving an inward looking, largely if opinions are inward looking, right, and then I think they're much more valuable, right? So it's almost, so equally, like say, for example, we have articles on Curio, like saying, say from The Guardian, which will say, The Guardian, which is very much a left-wing newspaper, will say, why are blue-collar voters voting conservative? And almost saying how the left, which is supposed to be the bastion of blue-collar voters, right, is actually, they are not attracting the blue-collar voters, right? And it's a very inward-looking article saying how liberalism has failed the blue-collar voters, and this one. And that is an opinion. But because it's inward-looking, it opens up, it generates an empathy, right? People are willing to sort of listen. Whereas if it's a critical thing of saying, oh, you people have failed, people are not. So I think that's largely the basis on it. So we are not saying this is what is empathetic or this is what is not. It's more very clear. It's almost like if it's inward-looking, it's fine. Or if it's a subject matter analysis kind of thing, that's also fine. So it sort of gives you that sense of going deeper, or that sense of being inward-looking, or that sense of building, or it should generate that sense of wonder in you saying, oh, I didn't know that, right? And ultimately, our aim is that when every piece of content in Curio, you don't come away saying, yes, I agree with that, or no, I don't disagree with that. Ideally, you come back saying, oh, that is interesting, it's making me think, and it's something I did not know, and go. That's basically the almost the measure of how we decide what goes in and what doesn't.
Which is why I think Curio is a terrific name for what you're building. I almost makes me jealous. We should have thought of that first. But it's a great name. I think that the element of wonder is something that it's not easy to bring that about. And what it actually made me wonder was that, so while you're striking these partnerships with different outlets, and you've got some top-notch publishers on your platform, at the back of your mind, is there a sense that we need to cover a certain spectrum? Because in some sense, when classic radio at its best brought you perspectives from all sides of the spectrum. And the other great thing was that you could be listening to, let's say on the World Service, you could be listening to some story from Africa 1 minute, and the next minute it could be sports from the USA. You walked away with a sense of wonder about the world. So so I want to know a little bit about how publishers are embracing this, and at the back of the mind when you strike these partnerships, are you trying to kind of cover a broad spectrum?
Yeah. Okay. No, that's a great question, right, there, Ramanand, because there are two, as you say, right? I mean, one is what is in it for us from the publishers, and what's in it for the publishers from us, right? I think the second is an easier question to answer first, because I mean, as far as what's in it for the publishers, it's ultimately most publishers are looking for three things, right? Reach, revenue, and engagement, right? So either all three ideally, or some combination of the three, right? And in basically in offering this in audio, and in offering this to a very different demographic, and in offering this in a way that may not necessarily mirror the way that they are offering their content, right? I think they are basically seeing both reach and engagement happening on our platform. And of course, we do share revenues back with publishers, right? So effectively, so for them, there is a combination of all three that they get from Curio, right? But I think what they find very valuable is definitely the expanded reach that comes from the way we are offering the content, both not just in terms of audio, but also because of the whole positioning of the content, why it is offered this way, right? Like, so basically, you can see that, I don't know whether many of your CTQ people, are natural Financial Times readers, right? I mean, they may not be from the finance industry, they may not do this one, but because of the content from the FT that we choose and offer on Curio or from the Wall Street Journal, suddenly they are getting exposed to that content, which they would not have done otherwise, because those publications have a very clear brand identity associated with them, right? So we are offering that expanded reach, but also obviously there is then revenue and different kind of engagement that's there, right? And for many publications, depending on the agreement, we also sort of are happy to have a content exchange where we return the audio back to them, and then they can use the audio to sort of engage with their own sort of readers and users in a different way, right? So that's on the publisher side. For us, I think there's a combination of both, in terms of both editorial, like and of course strategic aspects, which sort of decide who are the publishers we partner with, right? I think editorially, and the main thing is it's got to be, I think the word trust is we used widely, but genuinely they have to be trustworthy in terms of that they're considered, that they make sure that what they are publishing is valid. It's not. And then the opinions are fine, right? But I think the trustworthiness and building of that and the value of that trust and quality is very important for us, right? And which is why also the kind of publishers that we have are there, right? And also strategically, also the thing over here, Ramanand, is that there are some publishers who have such a wealth of content, right? Especially, you may call the Guardian or the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post as newspapers. Correct. But frankly, I mean, they're all producing like 700, 800 articles a day, right? Across, everything from politics to sport to culture to arts to science to well-being to anything. So what you have is a high-quality set of sources of a wide range of content, which we can then start dipping into for multiple things over there, right? I think that's a strategic thing for us. And then that's on the bigger partners. And then the smaller partners are obviously, or the more niche partners are very high quality in their area, right? Like Aeon is unparalleled in what it offers, right? I mean, like, you can think about it. I mean, like, the way that they are taking specialist academic subjects to try and make it to a more generalist audience is something that is hugely valuable, right? Or Nautilus, which is great at its science publications, or Scientific American. So you have specific areas and specific publications who are more specialized within their areas, niche areas, which are high quality, but are performing these things. And then they are able to obviously offer that expanded sort of breadth of content for us. As you say, that sense of wonder that comes in across that breadth of content, right? So it's a combination of these two that decides how we sort of who we sort of partner with.
Right. Yeah. In fact, some of you also mentioned the likes of Aeon and all. uh, through this, any good content platform exposes you to these little gems that are hiding. I think we've, read a lot or heard a lot of the Baffler, Hustle. We've picked articles for our compound, daily Curio compound folks to read because we kind of discovered them and really enjoyed what they were offering. And so I think the idea of these platforms as not being content platforms or news platforms are that when you start your day, you can start your day with reading something from the Nautilus. It doesn't have to be starting with the FT. Is something that I think people are hopefully learning to do because there is a lot of wonderful content out there. So that brings me to another question. Um, so in your experience now, if you look at an article, can you tell if it is curio worthy? What would be the 2, 3 elements that would it be the author? Would it be the starting line? What is it about it that would make it to the curio cut?
I mean, I think for me, as I was saying, right, I think for us, it's very much the whole way the article is written and positioned, right? I mean, it has to ultimately deliver the value that we're looking for it to deliver, right? I mean, at the end of it, when we finish reading the article, I should come back thinking, oh, that is an interesting opinion I did not know before.
Right.
Or that is an interesting fact. I mean, like that's something more that's making me think of something more and wanting to research more or wanting to find out more about something. That is really the crucial aspect for us for it to be curio worthy, right? I mean, or if it's giving me an additional insight into something we didn't have before, right? Like, like for example, one of the more, you mentioned the Hustle, and one of the more recent Hustle articles we're going to have out on Curio, if it's not already out, maybe next week it will be, is actually then explaining what SPACs are, right? Like everybody's talking about SPACs. It's just a pure explainer, but you come out with it saying, okay, I may not have known it. Maybe if you're an expert, that's a different matter. But it's a very simple way of getting that. It could be a simple explainer, right? Or it could be somebody like a Janan Ganesh from the FT who has his very, very, different takes on culture and the way it is, and you come back thinking, that's not a way I thought of things before, right? So I think that's really what it is, right? It goes back to that. So in many times, there are some authors who deliver obviously this constantly because that's how they are, that's how their mindset is. So there the authors may become relevant, but genuinely it's about that whole, ultimately the thing of the content should come to you as a whole, right? And in today's world, it's important, I guess, we are, so sensitized to these things now, which is that sometimes there will be a great article with a great flow, and then suddenly they'll make a stray comment of, I don't know, oh no, if only Trump hadn't completely messed things up this way or whatever, and then you're like, you don't need that, right? And suddenly then that makes you pause and say, okay, that suddenly takes away the whole message of the article, saying you're invalidating your own opinion by showing your sort of a bias over there, right? And so and I think that's so ultimately we have to go through the whole article to see it. So it's not just what is the starting line or whatever else it is. In fact, many times what happens is, because that the headlines are written by different people than the article, the authors of the articles themselves. And sometimes we wish we could change the headlines to show really the value of the content, because the headlines sometimes we feel don't do justice to the articles themselves. But that's not something.
Right. So off late there has been this decoupling between the writers, the journalists associated with platforms, seeking to either move away from the numbers-driven game that a lot of mainstream media has kind of got into. So they are looking at platforms like Substack, and they've also amassed their own following. So in the future, do you envisage a scenario where you will be curating from individuals, like some of the names you mentioned, and as much as the platform or the news provider itself?
I mean, that's again a great question, right? Because it's not actually in the future we see ourselves not just curating from individuals, but also even commissioning our own content, right? I mean, ultimately, the idea is that if we want to drive a certain editorial value and a certain value out to people, right, then we can. And now we have more of the data, more of the insights to help us to start commissioning that with better sort of insights and better confidence, right? So we've already started actually working with a couple of authors, more in terms of to start trying out a couple of stories where in terms of saying, okay, whether and even produce them more like stories to then say, okay, let's see how they perform and how we can get there. But yeah, ultimately that's definitely there, right? But and the trick is always going to be that how are we maintaining those the some of the editorial sort of standards. Not when I say standards, I mean the editorial requirements. Correct. Which make some of these publications what they are, right? Like, say if you look at the Financial Times, they have almost roughly, I can say they have about articles of 3 different lengths, right? I think there'll be shorter articles of about 700 to 1,000 words. There'll be about then a 1,500 word article, which is the second length, and then there'll be long pieces, which are story pieces, which are about 3,000 words or 3,500 words, right? But only certain of those get to like the longer ones. But what the punch that a 700 word, 1,000 word article of the FT can pack is something amazing, right? And that comes in because of the editorial restrictions or the editorial rigor of the FT over there, right? And then so the challenge is going to be also because, and then many times you can see that if you go to the journalist's own blog, and then when they you can understand, obviously you understand the enthusiasm, right? Then they go, and then it goes on for a longer period. So there's some of these things which we can sort of which we work towards while want to work towards while we start to commission and work with these over there. But definitely, we look at Curio as being a platform in the future, in the very near future, not just for publications, but also for individual content contributors to come in and start to offer the content, and where we can curate and commission those.
Great. I think a lot of us are going to look forward to that. The other aspect to audio journalism is the audio part of it. So tell me a little bit about how you go about turning a fine article, because when we read an article, we read it in our own voice, silently in our minds. It's sometimes in the beginning it's a little interesting or disorienting to listen, and while you're maybe cooking or doing all these other things, you're listening to a little news item and trying to do that. So what have you learned about everything from what kind of voices work, the whole accents issue? We get these fine British accents on the Curio app right now, but tell me what you have learned about the audio side of audio journalism.
No, I mean, and that's again a great question there, Ramanand, because as you say, right, I mean, the thing with audio is that because you're not reading in your own voice, right? Because when you're reading in your own voices, you have to connect with that voice.
Correct.
Right? I mean, there are few people, of course, who are able to listen to anything, right? Because for them, it's almost functional. Okay, I just want to keep, because it's more efficient. It's about efficiency. But for most other people, you have to connect with that voice, right? That is the critical thing, right? There's a reason why Stephen Fry's Harry Potter is a massive bestseller as compared to other people's Harry Potter, right? Because that he's able to make people connect with his voice and with the characters over there, right? And that is required as much for non-fiction or journalistic or research articles as for fiction, right? And not just as much, I'd say maybe even more so, right? Because and so I think what we saw was that and so there are a combination of different things, right? I think one is that the voices have to be, the more you're able to make it seem like a conversation rather than a professorial kind of reading this over there, right? People are engaged a lot more. It's sort of you start to engage with it a lot more, right? And secondly, as far as each piece of content itself is concerned, right, the narrator has to be one who engages with that content. They have to almost embody the author themselves, right? They have to. It's that sense of passion, that sense of curiosity, that sense of this one has to come out when they read it. But when they and that's why it's called voice acting, right? It's not just reading. But when they do, but equally, given the kind of articles, they're not meant to sort of completely dramatize it either, right? I mean, so it's got to be a subtle way of making sure that comes across. Right, and that's where it happens, whether it's in the pauses, whether it's in deciding what they're going to emphasize, what words they emphasize, what they don't, what else. The subtle things, but each of those things makes a big difference to how you engage with the content, right, and how you do. That's on that aspect. But then the detail is so important as well, right? Whether it's pronunciations, the gaps between paragraphs, all of these things, because if everything is going well. you generally are not going to marvel saying, oh, this is a well produced piece of audio. But if something is wrong, it immediately will jar you, right? If there's a bit of pronunciation that's wrong, or if there's an extra gap somewhere, or there's not enough of a gap, so that attention to detail in that production is very important, right? And I think finally, if you want to, and radio producers are experts at this, right? Because they've got long years of experience, right? But so if you want to get people to listen for a longer time, you need to cater to their waxing and waning attention span. This one, and that is something that is limited for us within an article. But then between articles, it's more possible, right? And that's where the duration of articles could come in. That's where, say, things like the intros we provide and a bit of the thing at the end, in terms of the end credits kind of thing comes in. It's almost like giving people a bit of a breather to switch off before getting back into the next article, right? And then an intro is great also because you decide whether you want to continue to listen to that or not, or whatever. It sort of provides you a hook as to why to make that investment in the next 10, 15, 20 minutes into the article.
Correct. So, I know Curio has been around for a few years now, but in 2020, did you see a sudden change in behavior, more adoption, or has it been a steady kind of increase in adoption?
So when you say adoption, are you talking about the reach, or you're talking about engagement within Curio, or the kind of engagement within
You can talk to me about both.
Okay. I think obviously, in terms of the reach, as the name gets more and more known, right? Obviously, then it starts to become a bit more exponential in the growth, right? I mean, it's more about getting people to know about Curio more, getting people to realize that it's there, and then as they do, then people are engaging more and more. So it's a big function of getting the name of Curio out there, and also a big function of, I think, of really what is Curio, right? And getting people to understand that. That is something that we have ourselves, honestly speaking, struggled with for a couple of years. We struggled with saying, okay, everybody would come and say, we have to say, oh yes, we partner with all these publications, but we are not news, this, but we are not, right? And so I think it's taken us time and a lot of effort to sort of really crystallize this value and say, okay, this is what you can get out of Curio, to make it in a simple way for people to understand. And that's actually been crucial in driving the scale of that adoption over there, right? And making that happen. Now, and in terms of adoption within Curio, one thing I've always found is that when people came into Curio, right, they engaged a lot, right? I think it's always been there. I mean, we have average session durations of about 35, 40 minutes per session, right? I mean, because people come in and listen. But what has changed over this last year is obviously the kind of engagement, when they engage with Curio, right? And maybe, and this one, because obviously before Corona, before this thing, the commute was a big aspect of people's consumption, right? But interestingly, it's not like the number of hours of listening has fallen in this period. It's more that it's actually spread out through the day, right? So people are finding more interstitial moments to actually come and listen to audio. And if anything, it's gone up. It's almost like the screen fatigue that has come up in this period is getting people to think about audio more, right? So I find Curio great for my lunchtime listening, right? I take a break. I say, okay, what? I listen to it during lunch, or I listen at the end of the evening, maybe even when I'm before going to bed, or when I'm in bed, or whatever. Right? I find it great for me to just listen to it. Then, when I have no screens, when I have no this one, I find it quite interesting. Then, but people are both qualitatively and quantitatively, we know, that are sort of listening across, right? Whether they are doing something during the day, but now that they're starting going on the walks and runs, or in the gym, or whether they're doing it, at lunch breaks, or washing, or cleaning, or whatever. So it's gone through a lot more of that sort of evolution. I think a much faster evolution in this last 1 year than we would normally see if this thing hadn't been there, right? So I think that's one thing.
Yeah, in fact, one of our subscribers, Sumit Pai, he's a big fan of Curio. And his routine is to pair it up with his morning walk. So he goes off for a walk, and I think he at least gets 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what article we've chosen or what article he's listening to. So that's his routine, and I'm glad to hear that people have found more points in the day to engage with something like this, rather than, because something like the commute, if you don't commute, then you don't do the habit. So it's quite a, it's a strong habit, but it's a very brittle habit. So something like this, hopefully they have their phone at hand, and like you said, taking that break away from screens is a newer kind of use case that has emerged. So before I get into a little more about habits to round off today's episode, we usually ask a quiz question along the way to all our guests, because we are, incorrigible trivia quizzers. So Srikant, I'm going to put you on the spot. And in fact, this is.
I'm sure you're going to get a complete. I'm completely used to the quizzes, but anyways.
We'll find out. So, in fact, this is also connected to an article that we had read from Curio. So, here goes. So, we're talking about another pandemic, okay? And this pandemic got its association with a country because at that time, the world was in such a state that only this country had free press. And so only they could report this pandemic emerging, and it got tagged with that country's press. So what epidemic, what pandemic are we talking about?
You're talking about the Spanish flu then. So
absolutely, of 1918. So the poor Spaniards got tagged with the Spanish flu because they were neutrals at during that period of the World War, and so their press was reporting it, and it became known as the Spanish flu. So little nuggets that you can kind of figure out along the way when you do a lot of reading and listening. Good. Yeah. You didn't do too bad.
Well, luckily it was on Curio, right? So
right. So folks, up your trivia quizzing game, you know where to head to. Okay, good. So let me, since we were speaking a little bit about habits, let me shine the spotlight on you and your team. So you said that you didn't start off by necessarily being an audiophile. Apart from Curio, now do you listen to more audio either for competitive purposes or just to kind of, it just opened up this new way of consuming information?
So after Curio, right? I mean, I think there've been, not after Curio, but along that, I've discovered quite a few other audio products, right? I mean, there was obviously, I think Calm and Headspace are two audio products which offer great audio in a different way, right? Like, for different, very clear use cases.
Correct.
Right, which are there, and of course they're great audio as well, right? So they're there. But I've always been a big radio listener. I continue to be a radio listener because I like the serendipity of radio, whether it's in terms of the fact that I don't know what song is going to come next or what they're going to discuss, and I still am a big radio listener. I'm not a big podcast listener at all. Mm-hmm. There are occasional podcasts which are great podcasts, which I'm happy to get into. But to be honest, Curio takes up a lot of my listening, and I quite enjoy it. Right? I mean, it's like I feel like I don't really need something beyond that, right? At this point of time, and I do enjoy my reading as well. So I like to have some time to read, and so there's Curio. There are a couple of other apps. There's lots of radio. That would be my audio listening at this point of time.
And tell me about your reading habit. Do you read at specific times, or is it something that is it one of those interstitial kind of habits?
Normally, I will, that's the last thing I'll do in bed before I go to sleep, right? And I will, it's maybe half an hour before going to bed every night or something of that sort. At this point of time, at least. It's been, because, we all have been, I think, especially in this post-lockdown period, right? I think we're all. You guys have obviously been completely remote all the time. Are more used to regulating your times, your sort of your schedules. But it's been pretty full on, work-wise, right? And then I find reading as a great way to sort of wind down and sort of slow down just before going to sleep. First Curio, and then there's reading, and then it's sort of I like to, and reading. So because of that, my reading tends to be a lot more general fiction or science fiction or things like that, and good writing, which I enjoy more and more. So, yeah.
So do you see that it helps build taste, and it helps you kind of, you may not be directly picking articles every day, but since you're now in the media content curation business, Does reading help with that?
Of course. I mean, I think reading anyway is great, right? I mean, I think so. It goes back to even one of the first things when we started Curio, right? The biggest question for us was how do we decide what goes into Curio, right? And the challenge really is how are we making sure that we're not just curating for Govind and me, right? because we could just be quite it could be quite niche. We could be this what we like is not may not be what other people like, etc. Right? And I think what helped us a lot was the fact that we read a lot. We are more, sort of we could see things which are of wider interest, right? Which we may necessarily not be interested in, but it's there of wider interest, and that could help us a lot. Yeah, so definitely, right? I mean, I think reading expands your mind a lot, and I personally am a big fan of fiction because I actually think fiction expands your mind even more than than non-fiction.
Yeah, and science fiction, can kind of show you,
Exactly.
right, what's coming next. And but from a business point of view, are you the kind who reads non-fiction business to kind of understand where the industry is headed, those kinds of things?
So it depends. I mean, I'm not a to be personally. I don't read too many of those of the kind of self-help books. Oh, how to be a better leader or whatever.
Right.
Right? But I think industry trends, societal trends, uh, are hugely important to be on top of. Right for us. I mean, especially because of we are consumer. We like to be at the forefront of the at the audio revolution and want to continue being at the forefront of that.
Right.
So that's hugely important for us, right? And so that could be that's a constant set of and you're mentioning Substack, but there's a constant set of newsletters,
Correct.
research companies, whatever who are constantly keeping which and my morning inbox a lot of time is sort of with just going through a few of those things to make sure we know what the developments are around the world, right? And to keep your mind sort of active and almost constantly thinking about okay, what should be the next thing that we should be doing.
So are there a couple of them that you kind of particularly like?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we go to, I guess I go to, Pew Research is one, Edison Research is another one, and they produce some great reports, whether in the audio industry specifically or publishing or journalism or everything. Lion Tree is a US sort of investment bank who specializes in consumer and media companies. So their newsletter I find hugely useful, right? In talking about generally, what is going on in the consumer media kind of space. I'll follow, say, somebody like Ray Dalio, who's sort of writing his epic on LinkedIn, in terms of, in terms of, what he sees as society and some of the macro trends, etc. To keep, and I think those sort of things are those are some of the things I follow and I would recommend to sort of, one would be very industry specific, but then the others were general societal trends specific, societal trends to go on with, right? I mean, of course, you have somebody like a Yuval who will talk about Yuval Noah Harari will talk about, where society is going and etc. And his articles are quite interesting. And then you have, so though I think the combination has to be for us, for me, I sort of those like Pew, Edison, Lion Tree will be very industry specific. And then Ray Dalio or these people would be more general, right? Where you sort of are able to see where society is sort of trending towards.
Correct. And have the last couple of years, affected the way you write, you communicate, but now you're exposed to such high quality writing. Has that had any ripple effect on the way you write?
Right. Well, I'm not a writer at all.
Okay.
But I guess what it has done for me personally in terms of communication is I think my mindset has become more open, right? I find myself less bothered by opposing views. I find myself less bothered by views which I find are like, oh, this should not be there. I think my mindset has become just more curious, right? So it's more like, okay, if you have a thing, what is it? This one. I don't find myself wanting to have this need to say, no, you're wrong. I need to change your mind, right? It's almost like I'm happy to sort of, say, okay, you have a different view and that's fine, and leave it at that, and more to understand and provide that thing, saying, okay, that's why you have it. And if they are interested in finding out why I have a view, I'm happy to express it. But that's where I find my general communication has sort of, it's more, and that's because of the mindset that has moved that way.
It's like the anti-echo chamber in some sense.
Yeah, hopefully, but I don't know. But yeah, but I find myself more fascinated now because over time, it's a cliche, right? But from if you take it over a couple of 100 years or 500 years of this one, as that sort of time frame, what is good, what is bad, what is this one? There are of course certain things in the present, but there are lots of things that are happening otherwise, right? And I think, and so, do I need personally? Of course, I'm in a very privileged position, right? I'm not in a position of where I'm personally being oppressed or I'm personally being this one. So I have that position where I'm able to engage in my curiosity, but not need to change anything for myself, right? But equally, I think today I'm able to empathize more, understand more with people who are not in my position. And I so I can never, I would say 3 years back, I may have gone and said, yeah, you know what, just quit your job and go and become an entrepreneur, right? I don't find myself, in a position where I feel capable of giving any advice or anything now. It's all my what I did is based very much on my background, my privilege, my position where it was. And other people may not have the same thing. And I can only talk about what I did and how it came about there, but then, it's not like, just because I did it, other people should do it. So I think that those are sort of things that have changed for me over time, and especially because of Curio.
Right. So Srikant, from being a lawyer, listening to your voice all the time, to helping others, broaden their minds and create that sense of wonder every day. Thank you so much. This has been a very interesting conversation.
No, thank you so much for having me, Ramanand. And frankly, like I said, I think from the first time I heard of CTQ and what it's doing, I think what you guys are doing, and I think creating conversations around topics is hugely powerful, right? In fact, I was thinking that this is what Clubhouse is like today. Clubhouse is like this jungle, right? Like anything you can find. And CPQ to become like much more of like curated versions of Clubhouse, very much and quite powerful in terms of the kind of conversation that you're doing, and that's exactly what you're doing. And it's intimate, it's engaging, and it's doing a lot of things. And it's great to be, it's great to have gotten to know you and to have this conversation.
Yeah, if Clubhouse is Clubhouse, I think we are more like a chamber room, little conversations, and small is beautiful, like the one we just had. So thank you so much, Srikant.
Thank you very much, Ramanand. This was great, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome.